cocaine, betrayal, the FBI, gull-wing doors, Hollywood. Did we mention cocaine? Literally, none of you asked for this, but it's such a crazy story we have to tell you. So buckle up, baby, because where we're
12.
going,
We don't need roads.
the car we're talking about, the DeLorean DMC-12. And if that name doesn't immediately ring a bell, those doors will. You've seen them, maybe in a movie, maybe on a poster in your buddy's garage, maybe in a dream you had after eating too much pizza at 2 a.m. Those doors that swing up instead of out, like the car itself is trying to take flight. That brushed stainless steel body that looks like it was designed by someone who'd never seen a normal car and decided that was a good thing. For most Americans, it showed up in 1985 on the big screen, a silver wedge screaming across the road, hitting 88 miles per hour and disappearing into a wall of fire and light. It wasn't just a car in that movie, it was the movie. It was every kid's fantasy of what the future was supposed to look like. But here's what nobody tells you in the theater lobby. By the time that film came out, the company that built that car had already been dead for 3 years. The DeLorean existed in production for barely 2 years, and the man whose name was on every single one of them had already been arrested, put on trial, and dragged through a media circus so insane that even Hollywood couldn't have scripted it better. This isn't just a car story, this is an American story. About ambition, about ego, about what happens when one man bets everything on himself and the whole world is watching when the chips fall. This is the story of the DeLorean DMC-12. To understand the car, you first have to understand the man. John Zachary DeLorean wasn't born into money or privilege. He was a Detroit kid, sharp and hungry, who worked his way into the automotive industry the old-fashioned way, by being undeniably good at what he did. He started cutting his teeth at Chrysler while still in college, moved to Packard Motors, where he learned that quality wasn't optional, it was everything, then landed at American Motor Company before finding his real stage at General Motors, the most powerful automaker in the world at the time. Inside GM, DeLorean was a different kind of animal. Where other executives played it safe and climbed the ladder carefully, DeLorean moved fast and thought bigger. He didn't just manage cars, he created them. He is the man behind the Pontiac GTO, the car that essentially lit the fuse on American muscle car culture. A machine so raw and aggressive that an entire generation of American men remember exactly where they were the first time they heard one roar past them on the highway. He followed that with the Firebird, 2 legends, 1 man, 1 decade. Off the lot, DeLorean looked like a movie star. 6'4", chiseled jaw, the kind of guy who walked into a room and everybody already knew who he was. While other auto executives were giving dry speeches at industry conferences, DeLorean was doing magazine covers and TV spots. He was the face of American automotive ambition in an era when Detroit was king of the world. By 1972, at just 40 years old, he became the youngest vice president in General Motors history. Read that again, youngest VP in GM history. Every door in the industry was open to him. He had the title, he had the fame, he had the golden ticket. And then, in the move that either defines a genius or a madman, he walked away from all of it. In 1973, John DeLorean quit GM and started the DeLorean Motor Company. People thought he'd lost his mind. You don't just leave General Motors. You don't walk away from that safety net and decide to build a car company from scratch on sheer willpower and reputation. That's not how it works. But DeLorean wasn't interested in how things worked. He was interested in how things could work. He put together a team that read like a fantasy lineup. Colin Chapman, founder of Lotus and one of the greatest engineering minds in motorsport history, handled chassis design. Giorgetto Giugiaro of Ital Design, the Italian genius behind some of the most iconic car shapes of the century, drew the body. What they landed on was unlike anything on American roads. A stainless steel sports car sitting just 45 inches high. Gull-wing doors requiring aerospace-grade struts engineered in Germany just to hold them open. A fiberglass underbody wrapped in brushed stainless steel panels that didn't need painting because they didn't rust. An engine sourced from a collaboration between Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. A 2.85-liter V6 producing around 130 horsepower. Let's take stock of what we've got here. An American company with an Italian design, built in a factory in Northern Ireland, powered by a Franco-Swiss engine. Only in America do you dream this big. Only John DeLorean pulls it off, or at least gets close enough that it matters. To get cash moving early, DeLorean did something only a man with absolute confidence in his own legend would do. He offered 4 gold-plated DMC-12s at $80,000 apiece. All 4 sold. All 4 still exist today. The man built a gold car, named it after himself, and people paid for it. The DMC-12 started rolling off the line in 1981, and the American dream started showing its cracks almost immediately. The car hit dealerships at $25,000, roughly $58,000 today. For that price, American buyers expected perfection. What they got was potential wrapped in problems. The innovative windshield-embedded antenna didn't work. So that fancy digital radio just sat there, scanning endlessly, searching for a signal that never arrived. Almost poetic in hindsight. The alternator couldn't power all the car's systems. Batteries drained without warning. Drivers found themselves stranded on the side of the road in what was supposed to be a vision of the future. And then there was the engine, 130 horsepower, in a $25,000 sports car. For $7,000 more, any American buyer could walk into a Chevy dealership and drive home a fully loaded Corvette that would eat the DeLorean alive off the line, reaching 60 miles per hour nearly 2 full seconds faster. This was the brutal reality of going up against established American muscle with a dream and a deadline. But DeLorean refused to quit. By 1982, his team had developed a twin turbocharged version of the engine, one that, on paper, ran quicker than a Ferrari 308 and a Porsche 928. The car he'd always envisioned was finally close enough to touch. He just needed one more influx of cash, one more bridge loan, one more chance. A planned public offering at $12 a share could have brought $120 million into the company, enough to save everything. It kept getting delayed. DeLorean chased partnerships with bigger automakers instead. Production dropped to 3 days a week. The clock was running out. And then came the phone call. October 1982. John DeLorean gets a call about an investment opportunity that could save the company. He flew from New York to Los Angeles, walked into a hotel near LAX, and straight into an FBI sting. Hidden cameras, federal agents, and more than 59 pounds of cocaine, worth $6.5 million in 1982 money, laid out in front of him like a lifeline that was actually a trap. The FBI alleged DeLorean was attempting to finance a drug trafficking operation to rescue his dying company. They got it all on camera. He was arrested as he walked out of that hotel. While he was still in the air flying home, the British government shuttered his manufacturing plant in Northern Ireland. His face was on every front page in America, the golden boy of Detroit in handcuffs. DeLorean Motor Company declared bankruptcy almost immediately. 2 years later, in 1984, a jury found him not guilty on all charges. Entrapment, the defense argued. A desperate man pushed into a corner by the very agents who claimed to be upholding the law. The jury agreed. But verdicts don't rebuild companies. The factory was gone. The money was gone. The window had closed. When asked after the acquittal if he'd ever returned to the auto industry, DeLorean gave the most American answer possible. "Would you buy a used car from me?" Here's the part that gets you. The same year the company died, a film crew was hunting for the perfect time machine. They needed something that looked like it had no business existing on planet Earth. Something that would make every kid in every theater seat lean forward and think, yeah, that thing could travel through time. They chose the DMC-12. And when Back to the Future hit theaters in 1985, the DeLorean didn't just survive, it transcended. It became bigger than a car, bigger than a company, bigger than one man's rise and fall. It became a symbol of American imagination, proof that sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones that don't quite make it. Today, a Texas-based company produces a small number of restored DeLoreans, roughly 20 cars per year, built on original chassis with new stainless steel panels and about 80% original parts. In 2009, refurbished models started around $57,000. Legislation passed in 2015 opened the door for entirely new replicas, though as their website puts it, with almost beautiful irony, a number of hurdles exist before production can begin. Some things never change. John DeLorean built a car that the world wasn't ready for, run by a company that couldn't survive long enough for the world to catch up. But the DeLorean DMC-12 is still here, in garages, in films, in the memory of every kid who ever watched those doors swing open toward the sky and thought, "That's the most American thing we've ever seen." This is everything you need to know to get up to speed on the DeLorean DMC-12. If we missed anything, let us know in the comments below. And if you've ever seen a DeLorean in real life or have a favorite memory about this iconic car, share your experience with us.